The boarding school was supposed to be a new beginning, but the silence that greeted me felt wrong, heavy with unspoken things. I arrived just as the sun bled out of the sky, casting long skeletal shadows across the old brick path. The girls' dormitory, with its tired facade and dark windows, seemed to be holding its breath. My room, number 213, was at the end of a long corridor that smelled of chalk and something sharp, like old secrets. The key groaned in the lock, revealing a small, cold room. 2 beds, one neatly made, the other waiting for me. And in the chair by the window, a girl. Her dark hair veiled her face as she stared out at the twilight. "You must be Clara," she said without turning. Her voice was a low, steady hum that barely disturbed the air. "I'm Mara." I tried for a polite smile, a simple, "Nice to meet you," but she just nodded at the dying light. "You'll get used to the noises here," she added, her tone flat. "Old building. It creaks." Her words weren't a comfort. They were a statement. I laughed, a nervous, hollow sound that died in the oppressive quiet. Mara didn't join in. That night, sleep wouldn't come. The quiet was too deliberate, too watchful. Then a sound cut through it, a faint murmur from the other side of the room. Mara was whispering. At first I thought she was dreaming, but her voice grew sharp, laced with an anger that was anything but sleepy. "I told you not to come back," she hissed into the darkness. The words wrapped around my throat, cold and tight. I opened my eyes, my heart pounding against my ribs. The room was bathed in the weak glow of distant streetlights. Mara was sitting bolt upright in her bed, her face hidden by a curtain of hair. "Mara," I whispered. Silence. The only sound was the soft, rhythmic breathing in the room, but it didn't feel like it was just hers. The next morning, it was like nothing had happened. Mara was bright, cheerful, asking if I wanted to grab breakfast. The sudden shift was jarring. "You were talking in your sleep," I said, trying to sound casual. "It sounded like you were really mad at someone." The smile vanished from her face. Her spoon hovered over her cereal. "I don't sleep," she said, her voice devoid of any emotion. "Never have." And with that, she stood up and walked out, leaving her words hanging in the air. I sat there, stunned. Was it a joke? It didn't feel like one. Throughout the day, every creak of the floorboards, every whisper in the hallway sent a jolt of anxiety through me. I decided to mention it to another girl in my history class, Lily. I just wanted a bit of reassurance, maybe a laugh about strange roommates. But when I said Mara's name, Lily's expression changed. "Mara Quinn?" she asked, a deep frown creasing her forehead. "She left. Last year. Dropped out right in the middle of the semester." I shook my head, my own confusion growing. "No, that can't be right. She's back. She's my roommate in 2 and 13. Lily took a step back, her eyes wide with something I couldn't quite place. "Fear? Pity? That's impossible," she insisted. "Room 213 has been empty all term. I walk past it every morning. No one's checked in there for weeks." Lily's words echoed in my head as I walked back to the dorm that evening. My mind raced, trying to find a logical explanation. A different Mara? A mix-up at the office? I needed it to be a mistake. But as I opened the door to room 213, a cold, cloying scent hit me. The smell of old, faded perfume. And there she was, Mara, standing by the window, a still silhouette against the darkening sky. She turned, but her reflection in the glass didn't. It remained perfectly still, a frozen image staring out into the courtyard. "Rough day?" she asked, her voice a soft, chilling murmur. She took a step towards me, and the air grew colder. "You'll sleep soon," she whispered, a faint, unsettling smile playing on her lips. "They all do." The words hung in the air, heavy and final. "Who's they?" I managed to ask, my own voice a reedy whisper. But Mara just turned back to the window. With a slow, deliberate motion, she drew the heavy curtains closed, plunging the room into absolute darkness. I stumbled back to my bed, my body rigid with terror. I lay there for hours, staring into the suffocating black, listening to the wind press against the glass like a hungry mouth, listening to the steady, rhythmic sound of two people breathing in a room meant for one. The following nights at St. Helena's boarding school turned into quiet, agonizing battles for my sanity. Every single evening, it was the same suffocating routine. Mara would sit by the window, her silhouette framed by the weak, yellow glow of the streetlight outside. Her head would be bowed over that notebook, her pen scratching away while I pretended to be asleep, my eyes squeezed shut. I never saw what she was writing. It was like she knew the exact moment I'd try to steal a glance. By morning, if I ever dared to look, the pages were always, without fail, completely blank. During the day, I was a ghost. My focus in class evaporated. The teachers' voices would melt into a monotonous drone, a background hum to the frantic drumbeat of my own heart. I'd find my eyes constantly flickering toward the classroom door, half expecting, half dreading that Mara would just appear. Even in classes she wasn't supposed to be in, the tension was a physical weight, pressing down on my chest until I could barely breathe. One afternoon, seeking some kind of escape, I went to the library. The quiet, I thought, would be a relief. But as I walked between the towering shelves, I froze. There she was. Mara, tucked away at a corner table, whispering softly into her cupped hands. It was the way a small child would share a secret, intimate and hushed. But there was absolutely no one else around her. The air was still. The silence was absolute. My heart hammered against my ribs and I spun around, pretending to be deeply invested in a row of dusty encyclopedias. I couldn't get out of there fast enough. Later that day, I confronted her. I tried to sound casual, nonchalant. "What were you doing in the library?" I asked. Mara just smiled, a faint, unsettling curve of her lips. "You shouldn't listen to things that aren't meant for you," she said, her voice smooth as glass. Then she turned back to her notebook, sketching these bizarre, nonsensical patterns. They were circles within circles, each one marked with tiny, almost invisible letters that I couldn't decipher. That night, something inside me snapped. I'd had enough of the games, the whispers, the chilling ambiguity. I kept my phone clutched in my hand under the covers, the recording app open, ready to capture whatever strange ritual she performed in her sleep. But as the clock ticked past midnight, the dorm was eerily silent. There were no whispers, no scratching pen, just the gentle hum of the old radiator. Then my phone vibrated, a sudden buzz against my palm that made me jump. From an unknown number, just 5 words. "You shouldn't record her." My hand started to shake uncontrollably. I fumbled for the lamp switch, flooding the room with light, and my blood ran cold. Mara's bed was empty. Not just empty, but pristine. The sheets were perfectly smooth, the pillow cool and untouched. I scrambled out of bed and rushed to the door, my fingers fumbling with the lock. It was bolted. From the inside. My breath came in ragged gasps as I scanned the room, my eyes darting into every shadow, half expecting to find her hiding behind the curtain. But when I ripped it aside, there was only the vast, empty darkness of the night staring back at me. And then I saw it. A shadow in the courtyard below. A figure standing stock still near the old founder's statue, looking directly up at our window. The next morning, it was like nothing had happened. Mara was back, humming a soft, tuneless melody as she brushed her long, dark hair in the mirror. "Bad dreams?" she asked. Her tone was light, almost playful, but her eyes in the reflection were distant, as if she were looking at something far, far away. Mara tilted her head, that slight, knowing smile playing on her lips again. "I was," she said, her voice dropping to a confidential hush. "You just didn't see me." After that, the days began to blur into a single, paranoid haze. The whispers started to follow me outside the room. Other students would fall silent when I walked by, their eyes following me. I heard the rumors. the girl in 213. Some claimed they heard two distinct voices coming from our room late at night. Others swore they saw shadows moving under our door long after lights out. My teachers pulled me aside, their faces etched with concern. But whenever I tried to explain about the whispers, the disappearing act, the terrifying text message, their eyes would glaze over with that polite, dismissive sympathy. "It's just stress," the school counselor said kindly, pushing a box of tissues across her desk. "You're just adjusting to a new environment." But how do you adjust to a roommate who doesn't seem to eat, doesn't seem to sleep, and can vanish into thin air between one heartbeat and the next? One evening, driven by a desperate need for answers, I decided to follow her. After dinner, I watched as Mara slipped away from the dining hall, moving with a silent grace that was becoming all too familiar. She headed toward the old auditorium, a building that had been locked and closed for renovation since the previous year. I crept behind her, my heart pounding with each step. Through a crack in the dusty wooden door, I saw her. She was standing alone on the center of the stage, her back to me, whispering into the vast, cavernous darkness of the empty seats. "You're not supposed to be here," she said softly. For a terrifying second, I thought she was talking to me. My blood turned to ice. But then, I saw it. In the faint, ambient light, I saw the barest outline of something sitting in the front row, a form that had no right to exist in that kind of light. I stumbled back, a gasp trapped in my throat. When I dared to look again, she was alone on the stage, the auditorium empty and silent once more. The next morning, she was really gone. Mara didn't show up for breakfast or for any of her classes. Lying on my desk was a single, folded piece of notepaper. The handwriting wasn't hers. It wasn't mine. I went to the administration office, my hands shaking. There was no student named Mara registered at St. Helena's. No one by that name assigned to room 213. When I returned to my room that evening, her side of the room was bare. Her bed wasn't just empty. It was gone. The whole frame, the mattress, everything. As if it had never been there at all. The only proof it ever existed were the faint scuff marks on the floorboards and a clean rectangle on the wall where the headboard used to be. Utterly exhausted, defeated, I collapsed onto my own bed. I tried to force my mind to accept the rational explanation, that I had imagined it all. A stress-induced hallucination, a complete breakdown. I squeezed my eyes shut, praying for sleep, for oblivion. And that's when I heard it. A voice, whispering from the darkness right beside my ear, from the space under my pillow. It was soft, trembling, and terrifyingly familiar. "Don't let them take me again." I shot upright, my heart a terrified bird beating against my ribs, and stared into the shadowed space between my bed and the wall. And in that one horrifying moment of clarity, I finally understood. The whispers weren't coming from Mara. They were about her, and they had been for me all along. Thanks for watching. If you enjoyed this story, don't forget to hit that like button, subscribe to the channel, and ring the bell so you never miss another chilling tale. Video opens on a shot of a digital clock blinking 2:47 a.m. in a dark dorm room. The sound of a storm rages outside. The night over the dorm was deep, almost suffocating. The clock on my nightstand blinked a relentless 2:47 a.m. I sat, bolt upright, my own breath fogging in the cold air. Something was wrong. I looked over at Lily's bed. It was empty. But not just empty. The blanket was folded perfectly like a display in a store. The air in the room felt heavy. Then a sound. A door creaking somewhere down the hall. I called out her name, my voice a small, trembling thing. "Lily?" The only reply was the storm, its thunder rattling the window pane. I slipped out of bed, my bare feet cold against the floorboards. The corridor lights flickered erratically, casting long, dancing shadows. A fierce wind howled through an open window at the far end of the hall, making the whole building feel like it was groaning. And then I heard them. Footsteps. soft, dragging, impossibly slow. My eyes were drawn to the library door, which was always locked at night. Now it stood slightly ajar. A sliver of darkness beckoned. My hand trembled as I pushed it open. The smell of dust and old paper, thick and ancient, hit me first. Inside, the moonlight cut through the grime on the windows, illuminating the large blackboard at the front of the room. And on it, something was written. Faint chalk letters seemed to glow in the pale light. 5 words that made my blood run cold. Don't sleep in her bed. My pulse hammered against my ribs. I spun around, ready to run, but stopped dead. Footprints. Small, white footprints, like they were made of chalk dust, trailed out of the library and led back down the hall, back towards our dorm room. Against all my better instincts, I followed them, my own heart thumping a frantic rhythm with each step. I reached our door and pushed it open. And there she was. Lily. She was sitting on her own bed, her back to me, facing the wall. Her hands were coated in white chalk. Lily. What's wrong? I whispered, my voice barely audible. The silence that followed was deafening. Then, slowly, she turned. Her eyes were wide, unblinking, like a doll's. She wanted me to remember, she said, her voice a soft, hollow sound. Who? I asked, taking a hesitant step closer. Lily's gaze drifted towards my bed. The one who used to sleep where you do. Just then, the lights flickered violently, plunging the room into momentary darkness. The hands on my analog clock spun backward, a full rotation, before ticking forward again. And from the corner of the room, from nowhere came a faint, childish giggle. My phone, sitting on the nightstand, buzzed. A notification lit up the screen. A new voice memo, recorded at 3 a.m. I hadn't touched my phone. My fingers shaking, I unlocked it and pressed play. A whisper, raspy and cold, filled the room. Switch beds. Lily froze, her eyes snapping to my phone. Don't, she pleaded, a genuine terror in her voice. She listens when you do. The next morning was gray and lifeless, the sky a blanket of slate. Lily was gone, vanished. Her bed was made perfectly again, the blanket tucked with military precision. But on my desk, beside my textbooks, was a single piece of white chalk and a note scrawled in Lily's familiar handwriting. Don't stay here tonight. Whispers followed me through the day. Students huddled in corners talking about seeing someone walking the halls barefoot in the middle of the night, leaving no footprints. When I mentioned it to the headmistress, she dismissed it as a silly rumor, a product of overactive imaginations. That evening, I packed a bag, determined to follow Lily's warning. But when I tried to leave, the dorm room door wouldn't budge. The handle was jammed tight. I pulled and pushed, but it was like it was sealed shut. The lights overhead buzzed low and menacingly, and the air grew thick again, pressing in on me from all sides. Defeated, I sank onto my bed. My eyes landed on a notebook I hadn't seen before, lying open on Lily's desk. It was her journal. I picked it up, and my breath caught in my throat. The handwriting on the page, it wasn't Lily's. It was mine. My own cursive looping across the page, writing words I had no memory of writing. I dreamed her again. She doesn't want me awake. I dropped the book as if it had burned me. At that exact moment, the door creaked open all by itself. A blast of cold wind swept through the room, scattering papers everywhere. The lamp on my desk flickered once, twice, a third time, then went out. I felt it before I heard it. A soft, cold breath against my ear, and then the whisper, closer than ever. Switch beds. I whipped my head around. No one was there. The room was empty. But then, a click. The small camera on my laptop, the one I kept taped over, turned on by itself. Its little green light glowed in the darkness, recording the empty air where something had just stood. I glanced at the clock on the wall. The time was 3:13 a.m. Again. The same time it had shown just moments before, just before it went out. The nightmare was looping and I was trapped right in the middle of it. This story is far from over, and I'm not sure I'll be here to tell the rest. What would you do if you were me? Let me know your theories in the comments below. Thanks for watching, and if you want to see what happens next, make sure you subscribe and hit that notification bell. Stay safe out there. The morning sun filtered through the thin curtains, but it brought no comfort. I hadn't slept a wink. My eyes were bloodshot, and my heart was doing this weird, frantic dance in my chest. I glanced over at Lily's bed. It was still empty, the sheets pulled taut, not a single wrinkle. It was like she had never even been here. Outside my window, I could hear the normal sounds of campus life. Students laughing, chatting on their way to class. They had no idea. My gaze fell on the clock. 7:01 a.m. It read. Then it blinked, just once, and froze. I crept closer, my breath catching in my throat. The hands, impossibly, started moving backward again. A cold shiver snaked its way down my spine, a feeling I was becoming all too familiar with. Just then, a sharp knock echoed on the door. It was the headmistress. "Clara," she called out, her voice muffled. "I have some news. You're being moved to another room today." A wave of relief washed over me so intensely I almost collapsed. Finally, it was over. I was getting out of this cursed room. My relief, however, was short-lived. She handed me a new key. Engraved on the small metal tag was the room number, 313. The same number from the note, the same number on the clock. A fresh wave of dread crashed over me, heavier than before. Was this a sick joke? I packed my few belongings in a daze. The walk down the hallway to my new room felt like a mile. Each footstep I took seemed to echo unnaturally, amplified in the strange silence of the corridor. It felt like the walls themselves were watching me, holding their breath. Room 313 looked different, newer. The walls had a fresh coat of paint, and the bed was perfectly made, just like Lily's had been. But the air, it was wrong. It felt heavy, thick, like it was pressing in on me from all sides. I dropped my bag on the floor, the sound jarringly loud. As I straightened up, a whisper, cool as ice, brushed right past my ear. "Don't move the bed." I spun around, my heart hammering against my ribs. "Who's there? Who said that?" The only answer was silence. A deep, unsettling silence that was broken only by a faint, rhythmic ticking. It was coming from a small, old-fashioned clock on the desk. I picked it up. The hands were pointing to 313, but it was broad daylight. Frustrated and terrified, I gave it a shake. The ticking stopped, and in the reflection on the clock's glass face, I saw it. Movement. A shadow, quick and fleeting, passed across the wall behind me. It was small, the size of a child, and I thought I heard a soft, faint giggle. Before I could even process what I'd seen, the door creaked open, all by itself. A young girl, one of the first years from the junior wing, peeked her head in. "Excuse me, miss. Are you the new one in this room?" I just nodded, my throat too tight to speak. She lowered her voice to a conspiratorial whisper. "This used to be Lily's old room from last year." My blood ran cold. "She moved out," the girl continued, her eyes wide. She said someone kept waking her up, right before the bell rang." As if on cue, the dorm bell shrieked through the hallway. It was shrill, sharp, and piercing, but this time was different. Everything outside my window, the birds, the students, froze mid-motion. The hallway lights flickered violently. The sound of the bell stretched on and on, twisting into an unnatural, metallic scream. I clapped my hands over my ears, trying to block it out, but it was useless, because inside my head, a second bell started to ring. This one was softer, slower, a ghostly echo of the first. And then a whisper slithered through the ringing, winding its way directly into my mind. "Now you'll never sleep either." The day dissolved into a blur. Night fell with an unsettling speed, the darkness outside the window feeling absolute. I was lying on the bed, Too exhausted to move, too terrified to close my eyes. The moonlight cast long, eerie shadows across the room, and I saw them. Faint, silvery handprints appearing on the far wall. They were small, too small to be mine. Then, the piece of chalk from the note which I'd left on the desk rolled off the edge and clattered to the floor. By itself. Footsteps. Slow, deliberate footsteps echoed from the empty corridor, getting closer and closer. They stopped right outside my door. I held my breath listening. The doorknob turned. Once, twice, then stopped. My room was plunged into an unnerving silence again. My phone suddenly lit up on the nightstand, its screen blindingly bright in the darkness. A new notification. Voice memo received. 3:13 a.m. But I hadn't recorded anything. My hand trembled as I reached for the phone and pressed play. It was Lily's voice. It was faint, distorted, and filled with a terror that made my own fear feel insignificant. "She doesn't live in mirrors, Clara," she choked out. "She lives in the hours." As her last word faded, the little desk clock started ticking again. Backward, the second hand ticked, 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 and stopped. At 3:13. Instantly, the lights in my room died, plunging me into complete and total blackness. A child's giggle echoed through the dark, seeming to come from every direction at once. And then I felt it. A slight shift in the mattress, a depression forming in the space right next to me. Someone was on the bed with me. My voice was barely a whisper, lost in the suffocating darkness. "Who are you?" A small, clear voice answered from the pillow right beside my ear. "I'm the one who never slept." The world just ended. The screen goes black, but the sound remains. The relentless ticking of a clock. And then, one last time, you hear the dorm bell ring, but this time, the sound plays in reverse. Thank you so much for watching. If you want to see what happens next, make sure you're subscribed and have those notifications turned on. You won't want to miss it. Stay safe out there.